Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm here with my new friend, Noémi. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do? And full disclosure, today's going to be a go-giver episode, I guarantee.
Thank you for inviting me, for your show, Jeff. It's an absolute honor. Two go-giver meets. I mean, that's amazing. And so I live in Cyprus in Europe, and I run a podcast booking agency called Podcast Connections and help entrepreneurs, business owners to get on quality podcast shows and help to share their knowledge and stories. That's what I do. I'm also an artist. I also have a different type of podcast, not business related podcast. So I do a lot of things.
And by the way, anybody listening, if you don't know who Bob Berg, John David Mann are, the Go-Giver, go read it, catch up, because that's what part of we are going to talk about a lot today. And I love, Noémi, that you have all of these interests, because that is literally what defines what I would call a visionary entrepreneur. The most fun and the most interesting conversation is tell me what you do. And it's like, wait a minute, there's bullet points in a slide deck. This should be a one sentence, for
Yes.
normal neurotypical people, it's a short 30-second blurb. For us, it's a story. And I love that. So tell me first, what kind of artwork do you do?
You can see if you watch the video right now. So you can see my mixed media collages. I'm a mixed media collage artist, and basically I use I made an homage to my Hungarian heritage because I was born and raised in Hungary in Central Europe and moved to Cyprus, first to Ireland, then to Cyprus 14 years ago. And I use these old postcards and vintage photos, and I incorporate them into my collages. And I sew these, basically sew paper and textile on canvas, because glue doesn't work in Cyprus, which is a funny thing, but true, because it's very humid and hot.
True entrepreneur, you got a problem, you solve it, right?
Exactly.
I love it. And I go into that because I think people do business with people, and I want to show that. Now, let's talk about podcasts. And, if anybody's surprised that this is going to get a little ranty, then sorry, not sorry. But, I shared with you before we hit record, I believe that, every entrepreneur, I don't care who you are, what you do, should be guesting on podcasts. And the gap in that conversation is always, okay, Smarty, how do I do it? And the answer to that is you reach out and talk to Noémi. So let's talk about why you believe in podcasts. Why do you do what you do? Because I think that piece is the critical piece here.
And that's a great question. And I love that, because I had a client, like a potential client, and the guy asked me, so, and do you think this podcast guesting thing is working? And I told him, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't run a podcast booking agency if it didn't work. I mean, that would be crazy. So yeah, I mean, this is part of your marketing strategy. And I think that's why everybody should do it, because I always see like marketing as like, one leg of the table. So this is just one thing. So don't put all your eggs in one basket, because if you think that like podcast guesting will solve all your client problems, and like you do 2 interviews and everybody will flock to you and buy from you and buy your book and buy your service, no, it's not going to work like that. And I'm 100% upfront with all of my potential clients and tell them, so if you have an established business, if you have like a financial, you can pay for it, pay the fees, and you are completely serious about getting out all these shows and promote yourself and give value to other people's lives and shows, let's do that. But if you just want to, just started your business basically like 2 weeks ago, then please wait, because they always ask me, it's like, when is the best time to start? It depends. If you have a well-established business, do it like yesterday. But if you just started, wait. And for us, like if I can see my own example, we started in 2020. I didn't do any podcast guesting that year, but in 2021, that was the first year I started doing it. And since then, nobody can stop me because I love it.
I love that. And I think, the thing, a couple things I point out, and I want your opinion on this, is number one, don't approach it from a transactional, when am I going to get clients? You got to think
Yeah,
about it as relational. And again, this is the go-giver in me. I'm selective as a podcast host. I interview people I like, or I interview people I know I'm going to like. And honestly, I've yet to meet an algorithm that can filter and bring me go-givers. And I want to point out for anybody listening, Naomi has brought me two guests so far, and one of them, I swear, we were separated at birth. I mean, we are, we are, we correspond regularly, and I think that's the piece that most people miss, is that it's not what can you do for me, it's how do we collaborate.
exactly. I mean, you just said it. That's spot on. For me, is we talked about this before hit recording, and this is the 21st century's networking tool. It's not just about like, okay, I done the podcast interview, they released it, let's share it once, maybe tag the host, maybe I won't, and then just let's forget about it. No, this is a networking tool. I mean, you can always set up a call after your podcast interview with the host. And I think more and more people started doing it. And I think that's amazing, because that's how you build connections. That's how you build relationships, friendships, business relationships. You don't know what you're getting out of it, but it's about connection. It's about people, and not just about an interview that was recorded 2 years ago. And like with your case with this specific client, and he's a great guy, and you just hit it on, and like I love it. Like it's amazing.
Shout out to Joshua. You know who we are. And we'll tag him and John as well. I think I got along well with him. So, but I think that's the key is, and maybe this is a bias filter for both of us. I've given Naomi blank slate. If somebody is a go-giver, I want to meet them. I don't care what we do together. I don't care if we do something together, but I do know that the right people in my network, we're always going to find something interesting to talk about. And that's how Noémi and I connected, was through, I think we were both on a networking call with Bob Berg, and, she reached out, said, hey, what do you do? I reached back and said, hey, this is what I do. And, we've been connected ever since. And I think too many people, they're used to going to those one-hit networking events where they go pass out their cards and then never hear from anybody. What I do find with networking on a podcast is, if you like me, you enjoy the show, odds are really good I like Naomi, you're going to like her.
That's it.
And I don't think people, they overcomplicate it. And they're like, I get people who say, well, I'll be on your show, but first I want to know what your metrics are, how many downloads.
Oh,
and
yes.
I don't care. I measure the podcast in how many comments, how many people in my network reached out and said, oh my God, Jeff, thank you. I needed to meet Naomi. That to me is success.
Yeah, and it's not about downloads. I get this question all the time from potential clients or on podcasts. So what about the download numbers? And it's like, first of all, it's private. You don't even know anything about it. Like, it probably not. I don't think all the podcast hosts know about their downloads either. So I have no clue. And I tell them, we use listen notes. We work with hosts that are in the top 10% in the podcasting world. And that's it. And they are quality people, and we wouldn't work with them otherwise, because we vet them. So we're not going to send you to a show that recorded 2 episodes and just disappeared from the space. And I think it's not about numbers. It's about connection. It's about trust. And I just, and when people don't understand that, so what's the ROI and what I'm getting out of this? It's it's really hard to explain, because this is not Facebook or Instagram ad. This is so different. It's about connection.
Well, and it's funny because I had one guy, he said, well, I'll be a guest, but can you guarantee me X number of something? And I'm like, I don't guarantee anything. First and foremost, if you're not interesting to my audience, I can't fix that. But if you're a good guest and we have a good conversation, which I presume going into it, somebody's going to reach out and say, hey, let's figure out a way to work together.
Exactly.
Now, I'm going to share one little pet peeve of guests, and I want your take on this. I've had a few guests, and genuinely, this is a past podcast in particular. I ask them, who do you work with and what do you do for them? And I get a blank stare. And as the host, I'm like, okay, I got to fix this, because if you don't know what you do, nobody listening is going to know. So let's find a way. So how do you prep your people? Because I'm going to guess, from the people I've met through you, I know you prep them. What are you telling them they need to show up with? What are you telling them they need to be a good guest?
I mean, first of all, you really need to know your client. And one of the first questions we ask them when we meet, that's the discovery call. So it's nothing decided, or we haven't, signed anything. We don't sign anything anyway. So it's like, doesn't matter. But so no, we are not Americans. And no offense. And so we always ask them, so who's your ideal client? Because if we know who your ideal client is, we know you better, we know your business better, and we know what kind of podcast we need to place you. So if you even don't hire anyone like a podcast booking agency, but you do your own research to get on, quality podcast, you have to be super clear about okay, so what's my business about and who is my ideal client is. Because if you can't answer those questions, it's really hard to find the right podcast for you, because it's just impossible. So you have to maybe sit down one day and think about it clearly and go through everything, because otherwise maybe you end up shows that they are not even related to your business or to you, and you don't want to be on those shows. So I think that's the first step for sure.
Well, and it's fascinating to me because a lot of people think any show is a good show, but the reality is your ideal clients, and I actually do, this is a weird thing, but after every episode, I run the transcript in my AI model, and I compare the transcript to my avatar, and I give it a score so that I know, am I adding value to my community? Now, my scores always skew higher because I'm here to make sure it fits my audience.
Yeah.
But if somebody's got a message, and you talked about this earlier, if they're not, say, nonfiction authors, they want to write fiction, probably, and actually you and I had this conversation via LinkedIn. You shared somebody who looked absolutely fascinating to me, but their message was not correct or right for my show. And the nerd in me, I wanted to meet this person anyways, but I want to be practical as a host, and I don't want to waste somebody's time.
Absolutely. And I think that's important, to have those calls and to check your potential your guest on the show, because I mean, it's exactly the same thing when you go in business with someone. My business coach told me once, if you can sit down and have a coffee with someone or a tea or whatever, have a meal at the same table, so don't work with them and don't get them on your show. Because it's not going to work out.
Yeah. And honestly, I've had a couple of people that others suggested I give them a shot. And, one guy in particular, really great guy in our first conversations, but something about the label podcast and, seeing the record button, he just froze. And it was like having a conversation with a turnip. It was just okay, yes, no answers. And it was just, oh, this is so painful. It was the shortest episode ever. I think 20 minutes in, I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe podcasting is not for everyone. I think once I wrote a LinkedIn post about that. It's not for everyone. Maybe, I know we said that at the beginning, everyone must be on a podcast show. But if you are, I don't know, too introvert, or you're just not that type of person who wants to be on a show, just don't do it. Let's do something else. Everybody has their own platform. You can still do social media. You can whatever. But if you don't feel like you are not the right fit, or you are not comfortable, or you're not vulnerable enough to share your stories, maybe that's not the right platform for you, and just accept it and try find something else. And I just had a great meeting, a great go-giver meeting, and one of my great friends there, she's amazing, and I love her to bits, and she can talk for hours, but she is so freaked out about podcast guesting, and she had her first interviews now, and she's amazing. And I just don't understand. I hate watching myself. I hate listening to my own voice. Then don't do it, but other people will do. But you share value, so come on, do it. And it's hard to tell people, because if you're not comfortable there, don't do it.
Well, and that's, I'm going to be blunt, but, I am a deep, deep introvert. And I think podcasting is the perfect balance for introverts and extroverts because, and I believe this sincerely, introverts have a superpower because we don't want many conversations. We want fewer but deeper. And I think that's the thing where people get tripped up. They get in their head about, how do I tell the story properly, and I have a friend who teaches people how to do TED Talks. And the reality is nobody cares about the body of facts you've memorized. They want you to be vulnerable. They want you to be real and go, I did this. It didn't work. Here's the lesson I learned. Let's move on. As opposed to, I'm an expert. You should listen to me. And nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Exactly. Your story matters. And many people ask me, so how do I tell my story? You just basically you practice it by getting on podcast shows. Like I remember my first podcast interview was, I had an amazing, an amazing podcast host, and he's great out there. He's from Canada, actually, and he was my first time ever. But I was so nervous, and I was just all over the place. I could barely share my story. So for me, it was like, probably I was a disaster. But then with years of practice, you just do it, rinse and repeat, go out there, do those shows. And I think Gary Vee mentioned that once, this like, it doesn't really matter where you are, just share those stories, share your knowledge, and just build up the momentum. And that's all matters. And it's not about the top 1% or whatever, like, everybody's about like only on those podcasts. And no, just do it. Find your audience, find the right podcast for your voice, and it will help your business succeed for sure.
And I always tell people, set your expectations. Joe Rogan is arguably one of the most successful podcasters. Right. But one day he had zero sponsors. He had zero, he started somewhere. Yeah. And I like to tell people, and I heard this from one of my coaches a long time ago, think of life as a buffet. And if you don't bring your particular recipe to the table, somebody's not eating. They're not getting something because they needed to hear your message in your words, in your style. And I think that's the thing. If you truly believe your message helps people, I'm going to steal from Jay Abraham, but you have a moral obligation to share it.
Yeah, and if you just have, for me, it's like if I just have one person who is listening, that's already a win. I mean, that's just so important, and it doesn't matter. And the other thing, now, like speaking of Joe Rogan, like so many people ask me, so can you get me on that show? And they had like 1 or 2 interviews before. It's like, well, you need to, when you go to the gym, you don't build up, Schwarzenegger muscles in 2 weeks. I mean, it takes time, it takes practice. So exactly the same with podcast guesting. No, they're not going to accept you as a guest. No. Yeah. I mean, maybe if you've done 100 interviews and you are famous, probably, or maybe not. Depends.
Well, and it's funny, and I've done a little research because somebody came to me and said, "How do I get on Joe Rogan's show?" And I'm like, not your first show, not going to be your first show, but what I did discover, he's got an amazing process, and full disclosure, it's a pay to play. You have to invest in, and fair is fair. I mean, he's covering a lot of costs. But even Joe Rogan, who has millions of listeners, the number one criteria is you've got to be somebody he'd be interested in talking to. He literally doesn't care about fame. He doesn't care about what you do or who you know. Yeah. What he cares about is, are you an interesting person? And if you talk about one of the topics he loves, you've got a shot. If you want to talk about something that he doesn't care about, you don't have a hope. And that's, I love the integrity that, if you're not a fit, you don't belong. And I think that's what people,
Yeah.
I rant all day long because it pains me to see people who are out there marketing and promoting their business. And I say, who do you serve? And they just can't answer that one question. It's not meant to be a trick question.
No, it's not. It's a basic question.
It's literally the moment you say, I'm going to go into business, that's the first question. I mean, nothing else matters until you understand, who do I serve?
Yeah, true.
And I think that's, I think that's the big pain I see in a lot of digital marketing. Yes, technically, if you use Facebook ads or YouTube or Google, you have target audiences and blah, blah, blah. But we're getting way too hung up on the demographics, what's the age, what's the gender. I'm actually talking to somebody tomorrow about a group in the US. They're called Liberty Spenders. And it's this unheard of, secret economy where ultra religious, ultra right wing people, they vote with their wallets and their beliefs. And, if you don't follow both the ultra right wing politics and the ultra religious views, you don't belong in that world because they will not give you money. And again, that's an extreme, but if you don't know your audience, you're donating money to, the Zuckerbergs of the world and saying, here you go, Mark, you clearly need this more than I do. So I get a little ranty because I love small businesses. They're the heartbeat of the world.
Exactly. Everywhere in Europe and in all over the world, for sure.
It's like, stop wasting money on things. So let's talk specifically about how somebody works with you, because I adore you. I think you're fabulous. And
thank you.
Full disclosure, the guests she's brought me have been fantastic. And I can tell that they've been prepped. So if you're thinking, maybe I should do a podcast, but I don't know what to do, have a chat with Noémi because she's great. So let's talk about your process. How does somebody find you? How do they work with you? How do they pay you? What does that look like from I'm just starting as a podcast guest. What do I do next?
Yeah. So it's a great question and very complex. So people can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, and pretty active on LinkedIn, as like, yourself, Jeff. And I make a lot of connections there. So if you find me like Noémi Beres with a little microphone sign next to my name, that's me. And you can also find, through our website, and you can ask for a, discovery call. And that's podcastconnections.co, plural, and not com, but co. So that's how you find us. And then once we establish the connection, then we're going to have that chat. And I always love to ask a lot of questions from anyone I get a call on, because I'm a go-giver. And plus, I want to know people who, I'm getting maybe business with. Are we the right fit? It's not like a pitch fest or anything like that, because we can still decide that, are we the right fit to each other or not? I think that's really important. We have the right vibe, we have the right energy. And once we have that, then we can start working together. And we always start with once people sign up with us, the sign-up process is really easy. So after our discovery call, we have a small upfront investment fee. You pay that, and then we schedule a Zoom call / discovery call with us, which will be a coaching session too. We call it strategy call. So we get on the call and we go through everyone's bios, topics, talking points, call to action. We have a kind of, background and experience in online marketing since 2007, back in the old days when everything was different. So we help people to create those call to actions. We have to brainstorm, because when you are on a podcast and people will ask you that, and what to include in the show notes, like, do you have a book, or how can we promote you? And you need to answer those questions, because this is about you and about your business. So we have them also to figure everything out before the show, and also give them some idea how to promote the show, how to use it for networking, and always emphasize that. So we talk about everything during the strategy call. And once that's done, we create everything. So most of the people, some people, they come with topics and talking points, because now, thanks to AI, you can do that like in 2 seconds if you are super clear about like what you're doing. And then after that, basically we do our research and we start working with people and represent them on different shows. We've worked with around 600 podcasts, mainly from US, Canada. And yeah, that's how we operate in a nutshell. It's a bit more complicated. I could talk about it for hours, but let's stick to this version.
That'll be a future episode, and I'm going to give you my 2 cents. And I don't know if you've done this, and I'm going to spring it on her. So if I elicit the deer in the headlights, don't panic. First of all, I would highly love to see your initial conversation as a podcast. I think that would be amazing. Second of all, and this is just me being me, your strategy call, that would be an amazing masterclass. And I don't know if you've done either of those things, but I mean,
I did the masterclass thing, but like 2 years, a year ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, like partially. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that later. But
yeah, totally.
I do want to say, and I think the key, I'm going to underline this, because if you don't understand the word go-giver, you're probably not going to get along well with me. And, you know, especially between Noémi and I, if you're not a go-giver, that's kind of a deal breaker. And I want to underline that you're screening people up front and saying, you know, and I think too many people miss this. If I don't like you, why would we work together? You know, and to me, there's no amount of money that makes somebody likable if they don't believe the things I believe.
I agree 100%. Yeah, it's like, again, you know, sitting down at the same table, same story. Like, we need that energy, we need that vibe. Otherwise, we just can't figure it out. And sometimes it happened before. I didn't listen to my gut feeling. Like, there's something wrong. Maybe I just shouldn't do that. And it didn't work out well. It was like nothing wrong. Like, we had no fights with the client or anything, but it just didn't work out. They didn't get the message. They just wanted like promote themselves on the shows, and just didn't work out. And I knew it like before, but just listen to your gut, and it never lies. It never lies.
Yeah, there's always something, and
it's
you know,
like tiny thing in, you know.
Yeah, if you listen, it'll tell you all you need. Now, for the podcast hosts out there, I just want to underline that it costs us nothing. Noémi is great. She brings you great guests. And I love that they've been trained and they've been screened. You're literally the go-giver perfect partner, because I know with 100% certainty, most of my guests will talk a little bit beforehand and I'll prep them. The people I've met from you, it's like, okay, let's hit record, let's go. And to me as a host, I value that. So I just wanted to call you out publicly and say, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's, you know, you're doing the work I just don't have the time or patience to do, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being a guest on the show today.
It's my absolute pleasure, Jeff. I really enjoyed it. I think we can talk for hours anyway. So
I dare say yes. So thank you.